Good evening, welcome to Ozarks Tonight. I'm Brian Calfano. The nation reeling from two more massive gun death scenarios last weekend in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. And tonight we're joined by our Ozarks First contributors, Nick Reed and Amy Blancett, to talk about what do we do as a country. And I think we should start the conversation with a basic question of what role should government play in dealing with keeping these events from happening ever again? Start with Nick.
I'm one of these folks that I've come to really believe that there isn't really a law that can be passed to make evil stop. This isn't a quick fix solution by any stretch of the imagination. I happen to believe it's a cultural problem. And, you know, that's a whole nother conversation, I suppose.
So can government play a role in helping to reform culture?
I don't think that any time you try to force culture by laws, it is anything that withstands. It's not built upon itself, and so it's not lasting. Now, I do believe that one of the problems that we do have right now is that when people do commit crimes, violent crimes, with or without firearms, there rarely is full enforcement, particularly when it comes to gun laws. And I think first step should be let's enforce laws that are there and then build upon that if we're going to, instead of having laws, not enforcing them and say, well, let's create some new ones. My thinking is, well, if we don't enforce the laws that are there now, or are we going to enforce the ones that are there in the future?
Because that's the knee-jerk reaction. And Amy, jump in here. I mean,
so some of the things that we look at in the idea of, like, does policy create change? With gun laws, we're seeing that many of the individuals who have access to guns have gained them rightfully through the policies that are in place. They're not individuals that are getting them on the black market that have, gone through these avenues. So the policies that we have in place are not working. So do we create new policy that are in line with the current policies we've already done, and are they going to be effective? No. Do we look at other countries and other groups that have created policy that have led to decreased gun violence or that don't have gun violence? Today, this topic, we were talking with my sister who lives in Spain, and she had said how tragic it is that we have to feel as we send our kids to school that there could be an incident.
We, meaning us.
Here in the United States, yes. So my siblings, as we were having this conversation, and my sister she lives in Barcelona of over 2 million people, and she's like, I send my daughter in the middle of a very busy city to a school where gun violence just isn't a thing there. First, they have obviously a lot of different rules and laws against guns. And we had the conversation that, does that mean violence is going to stop because we change gun laws? I have one sister who really likes guns, and she and her husband hunt. So there is this, constant conflict of, do we just do away with guns? Does that change? Well, no, because we still, as you mentioned, have this evil component.
Right. Well, the knee-jerk reaction, though, is when something like this happens, we need background checks, we need to make sure we have more mental health, all the sort of things you hear from Democrats, and then blaming the different sides and the rhetoric. But at the end of the day, no one's going to round up all the guns. So no matter what happens, Nick, right, you're still going to have the possibility somebody just snaps or does something devious to hurt people, and there's not much you can do, or am I wrong, in our society about this?
Well, and I want to use the term knee-jerk reaction, and that oftentimes is used, and I'm not saying that you are, but by people who are on my side of this issue as almost a derogatory sort of characterization. You're not thinking about it. But I do think what happens is that people want bad things to not happen. That's natural. And as human beings, we like to think that there is a way easily to make bad things. It gives us a sense of control. So our instinct is, can't there, and you hear it all the time, well, we must just do something. We must do something. The problem is the something, and we have actually tried something in a lot of different places. One of the ways that we're different than a lot of other countries, most countries, they have one blanketed gun law. We have so many variations with cities and states having their own gun laws. And so we do have the ability, and I'm a big proponent of let's see what people do and if it works. And there is a contradiction of what we want to do versus what we've already seen done, and you'll see some of the metropolitan areas in the country that have the most strict gun laws have the highest
Chicago.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is, Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, St. Louis, you know, certain parts of it. And so while that in and of itself doesn't necessarily conclude that that means that there will be more gun violence, one can't ignore it. And you know, I think we have to say, okay, we do have examples of making stricter laws. It doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? And maybe before we start doing that in other areas, we should make a determination.
Amy?
Well, and so when we had kind of started this conversation, one of the things we had talked about is the idea, you know, is prayer or is policy the answer? And I think you make a good point that a lot of times that knee-jerk thing is let's very quickly make policy, and we create policy then based out of like this passion that something has happened, and we make a very, you know, very clear box about how this policy should be without taking time to go back and evaluate and look at what types of policy has been effective, what type has not. And then how do we kind of come back to the larger view and say, instead of in that moment of passion and prayer and religion and all the other things that we come to in that moment of angst, that we've got to let a moment settle, and we've got to make sure that when we're making policy, it isn't knee-jerk. It isn't let's slap something together very quickly, but we've got to go back and look at data. We've got to go back and look at, as you mentioned, culture. We keep going back to, is this a mental health issue? Absolutely. Culturally, we're looking at mental health is on the rise, the diagnosis of mental health. Or maybe it's just been that we've been poor at diagnosing, or culturally we're uncomfortable talking about mental health. And so that leads to this idea of mental health and violence, and it's an easy thing to take back and say it's mental health when that may not be the thing.
Let's unpeel that a little bit more when we come back. We'll be right back.